The land lay open, endless, dry as bone. The wind moved across the plains, carrying the dust like a shroud. A girl walked there, her feet raw, torn, bleeding in silence. 3 days had passed since she fled, though time no longer felt real. She counted only by the ache in her body and the hollow hunger pressing her ribs. The road was not truly a road, only a faint track carved by hooves and wagon wheels long gone. She kept to it because it gave direction, because moving forward was all she had. Each step came slow, but she kept walking. Her shadow, stretched thin by the noon sun, swayed with her weakness. At night, she slept curled on the ground, clutching her knees against the cold. Coyotes sang in the distance, but she was too empty to be afraid. Her dress was torn at the hem, stiff with dust. She carried no bundle, no shoes, nothing but a face marked by weariness and something darker, loss that did not speak. On the morning of the 4th day, the horizon rippled with heat. She blinked against it, her eyes stinging, until a shape appeared. At first she thought it was a mirage, one of those cruel visions the desert played upon the weak. But it grew, steady, rhythmic, the sound of hooves against dry earth. A rider. She slowed, breath ragged, unsure if to run or collapse. The horse's shadow spread before her, long and silent. He reined in beside her without a word. His presence was heavy, yet still. She felt the animal's breath, smelled the leather, saw dust clinging to his boots. The man did not speak. His face was shaded by the brim of his hat, but his eyes caught hers for a moment, calm, unreadable. Then he looked away, scanning the horizon, as if deciding what to do. She kept walking. He did not move on. Instead, he guided the horse to match her pace. The animal's hooves fell slow, soft, almost deliberate, as though he meant not to startle her. She felt the strangeness of it. A man on horseback, choosing silence over questions, keeping her company without demanding her story. The girl's body trembled. Her lips cracked with thirst. She stumbled once, nearly fell. The horse stopped. The man leaned slightly, loosening something from the saddle. He held out a canteen, the leather worn and darkened by years of use. She hesitated, her pride caught between need and shame. Then her hands rose, shaking, hesitant. She drank, slow, each swallow burning against her dry throat. When she lowered it, he still said nothing, only nodded once, almost unseen, then straightened in the saddle. The sun kept sinking west. She kept moving east. He stayed at her side. That night, when she lay down by the roadside, he tethered the horse nearby. The fire he built was small, quiet, almost hidden from the vast night sky. He set bread on a piece of cloth and left it where she could reach it, then sat apart, staring into the flames. She ate in silence, every bite heavy with gratitude and fear. Her eyes kept drifting toward him, searching for intent, but he gave nothing away. Only the crackle of fire spoke between them. Her feet throbbed. Her body cried for rest. Yet her mind did not release its guard. She did not know him, did not know why he had chosen to remain. But something in the way he sat, still, patient, unthreatening, began to soften the iron, not her chest. When the night deepened, stars sharp and cold above, she closed her eyes. For the first time since she fled, she slept without trembling. The quiet rider stayed awake, his silhouette steady against the fire, watching the dark horizon where danger might rise. The land lay open, endless, dry as bone. The wind moved across the plains, carrying the dust like a shroud. A girl walked there, her feet raw, torn, bleeding in silence. 3 days had passed since she fled, though time no longer felt real. She counted only by the ache in her body and the hollow hunger pressing her ribs. The road was not truly a road, only a faint track carved by hooves and wagon wheels long gone. She kept to it because it gave direction, because moving forward was all she had. Each step came slow, but she kept walking. Her shadow, stretched thin by the noon sun, swayed with her weakness. At night she slept curled on the ground, clutching her knees against the cold. Coyotes sang in the distance, but she was too empty to be afraid. Her dress was torn at the hem, stiff with dust. She carried no bundle, no shoes, nothing but a face marked by weariness and something darker, loss that did not speak. On the morning of the fourth day, the horizon rippled with heat. She blinked against it, her eyes stinging, until a shape appeared. At first she thought it was a mirage, one of those cruel visions the desert played upon the weak. But it grew, steady, rhythmic, the sound of hooves against dry earth. A rider. She slowed, breath ragged, unsure if to run or collapse. The horse's shadow spread before her, long and silent. He reined in beside her without a word. His presence was heavy, yet still. She felt the animal's breath, smelled the leather, saw dust clinging to his boots. The man did not speak. His face was shaded by the brim of his hat, but his eyes caught hers for a moment, calm, unreadable. Then he looked away, scanning the horizon, as if deciding what to do. She kept walking. He did not move on. Instead, he guided the horse to match her pace. The animal's hooves fell slow, soft, almost deliberate, as though he meant not to startle her. She felt the strangeness of it. A man on horseback, choosing silence over questions, keeping her company without demanding her story. The girl's body trembled. Her lips cracked with thirst. She stumbled once, nearly fell. The horse stopped. The man leaned slightly, loosening something from the saddle. He held out a canteen, the leather worn and darkened by years of use. She hesitated, her pride caught between need and shame. Then her hands rose, shaking, hesitant. She drank, slow, each swallow burning against her dry throat. When she lowered it, he still said nothing, only nodded once, almost unseen, then straightened in the saddle. The sun kept sinking west. She kept moving east. He stayed at her side. That night, when she lay down by the roadside, he tethered the horse nearby. The fire he built was small, quiet, almost hidden from the vast night sky. He set bread on a piece of cloth and left it where she could reach it, then sat apart, staring into the flames. She ate in silence, every bite heavy with gratitude and fear. Her eyes kept drifting toward him, searching for intent, but he gave nothing away. Only the crackle of fire spoke between them. Her feet throbbed. Her body cried for rest. Yet her mind did not release its guard. She did not know him, did not know why he had chosen to remain. But something in the way he sat, still, patient, unthreatening, began to soften the iron knot in her chest. When the night deepened, stars sharp and cold above, she closed her eyes. For the first time since she fled, she slept without trembling. The quiet rider stayed awake, his silhouette steady against the fire, watching the dark horizon where danger might rise. The morning came pale and cold. The rider was already awake when she stirred, tending the small fire until it died to ash. He had not slept, or if he had, it was in fragments too shallow to matter. His horse shifted its weight, snorted softly, waiting. She sat up slow, every bone heavy. Her feet, raw and blistered, had swollen overnight. The sight of them filled her with quiet despair. She pulled the torn hem of her dress over her toes, as if hiding them could lessen the pain. He approached then, carrying a strip of cloth torn from his own shirt. Without speaking, he crouched before her. She froze. His hands were scarred, strong, used to work more than touch. He wrapped the cloth around her foot, careful, almost reverent. She wanted to pull back, to resist, but her body betrayed her. The relief of the cloth against the wound was more powerful than her pride. When he finished, he stood, dusted his palms, and returned to his saddle. Not a word passed. The sun climbed. She walked again, slower now, the bandage softening the sting with each step. He rode beside her, silent as before. The land stretched wide, the horizon endless, as though it would never release them. Hours passed. She stumbled often, the strength draining from her thin frame. Each time she thought she might collapse, she felt the horse shift closer, the rider's gaze steady on her. She hated the weakness in herself, hated needing that watchful presence. Yet she also knew, deep down, that without it she would not have lasted another mile. By noon, the heat bore down hard. The rider dismounted, walked the horse beside her. Dust clung to his boots, sweat darkened his shirt, but he matched her stride, refusing the comfort of the saddle. His silence became something different then, not just absence of words, but a kind of respect. She did not ask why he stayed. She feared the answer. That evening, they stopped near a thin creek cutting through the land. She fell to her knees at its edge, cupping water with both hands, drinking until her belly ached. He waited, letting her drink first, then water the horse. The animal lowered its head, muscles rippling as it drank deep. He set a small knife on a flat stone and began to cut strips from dried meat, laying them near her without comment. She ate slow, cautious, though hunger urged her faster. Every act of his care seemed to remind her of how far she had fallen from whatever she once was. When darkness fell, he built another fire. This time, she watched him more closely, the way his movements were practiced, deliberate. Not a man of chance, but of discipline. His face, lined by weather, carried something she could not name. Not hardness exactly, but weight, the kind that comes from years of carrying sorrow without complaint. Lying near the fire, her eyes burned with tears she would not let fall. She had fled 3 days barefoot, from what she could not yet let herself speak. Each memory pressed against her chest like a knife. She had lost too much: home, blood, safety. She told herself she would never trust again. And yet, here was this man, wordless, offering more than words could hold. Sleep came heavier that night. When she woke in the darkness, the fire burned low. She lifted her head, searching. He was there, seated against his saddle, rifle across his knees. Awake, unmoving, watching the horizon. The moonlight cut his profile sharp against the sky. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe she was safe. Not because of who he was, but because of what he did. By dawn, they moved again. Her steps grew slower, but he did not press her. Instead, he tied the horse's reins to his belt and walked beside her, one hand steadying her when she faltered. On the third day together, she broke. Her legs gave way, body refusing to rise again. She curled on the ground, dust clinging to her skin, and closed her eyes as if the earth itself might swallow her. When she opened them, he was there, kneeling. He said nothing, but his hands moved with quiet purpose. He lifted her, weightless in his arms compared to the burdens he had carried before. He set her gently upon the horse's back, tightening the reins, steadying her body with his own as he walked beside the animal. Tears slipped from her eyes then, unbidden. She turned her face away, ashamed. He did not look. The road stretched on. She did not know where it would lead, or who he truly was. But in that silence, in that act of bearing her weight, something broke open inside her. Not trust, not yet, but the first thin thread of it. The plains gave way to broken country, a place of scrub and stone. The road twisted through low hills, scattered with mesquite and cedar. The girl's body weakened with each mile, but the horse bore her now, steady and unhurried. The rider walked at its side, his silence constant, his presence like a wall between her and the emptiness behind. She did not ask his name. He did not ask hers. Yet the silence between them had begun to change. No longer sharp, it softened into something that held them both, like a fragile shelter. At night, when the fire lit their faces, she found her gaze drifting toward him. His profile was carved by shadow, marked by years in the wind and sun. She wanted to know what he carried, why he stayed. But words lodged in her throat. She had not spoken since she fled. Not to herself, not to anyone. Speech belonged to a life she no longer had. The third night, when the stars burned cold, she dreamed. In her sleep, her body shivered. Her lips formed names she could not bear to wake with. He saw it. He did not touch her, but he shifted closer to the fire, adding wood so the warmth would reach her. By dawn, she woke with eyes wet. She sat upright, pulling the torn dress closer, ashamed. He looked at her once, then turned away, as if granting her the mercy of not being seen. The road bent near a shallow canyon, where water traced through stone. They stopped there, resting. She lowered herself to the creek, watching the reflection ripple. Her face, gaunt and weary, startled her. She had not seen herself in weeks. The sight pulled memory to the surface. She had fled barefoot because there had been no time. The night her home burned, she ran. Men had come, men with torches and rifles, their voices drunk with violence. She carried nothing but her fear. Her family was gone before she reached the end of the field. She did not remember dropping her shoes. She remembered only the weight of running, the sound of screaming swallowed by flames. She pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from crying. The rider sat nearby, sharpening a blade. He did not look at her, but she felt as though he knew. That evening, as the sun bled against the horizon, they reached an abandoned shack. The walls leaned, the roof half gone, but it gave shelter from the wind. He led the horse inside, tied it to a post, then gathered brush for a small fire. She sat against the wall, knees pulled close, the smell of old wood heavy around her. He laid bread near her, as before, then settled on the opposite side. His rifle rested across his lap, his hat low. The silence pressed deep. She wanted to speak, to tell him why she had fled, what she had lost. But fear still chained her tongue. If she spoke it, she feared it would become real again, too sharp to bear. Instead, she lifted her eyes to him. His hands worked slow, steady, folding cloth, checking the edges of tools. He did not demand anything from her. No story, no thanks. And in that stillness, something loosened. She whispered then, just one word, a name, her own, barely audible. His head lifted slightly, as if he had heard, though he gave no reply. He only nodded once and returned to his work. That night, when the fire burned low, she lay awake listening to the horse shift, the wind creak through broken boards. Across the room, the rider sat upright, still watchful. His presence no longer felt like shadow. It felt like a guard, a wall against the dark. Morning came, sharp with cold. They moved again, leaving the shack behind. Her feet were bound now in strips of leather he had cut from the saddle's old rigging, crude but strong. She walked beside him part of the day, testing her strength. They did not know, yet, that riders were behind them. That smoke from her burned home had carried farther than she believed. That the men who lit the fire were not finished with her. But the land knew. The silence of the plains seemed heavier, watchful. The rider's eyes scanned the horizon more often, his hand resting longer on the rifle. She felt it too. The thin shelter they had built together would not hold forever. The wind carried a new sound across the plains, distant hooves. Not close enough to see, not yet, but enough for the rider to pause. His hand rested on the horse's neck, steadying the animal as its ears flicked west. He lifted his head, scanning the horizon. Nothing showed, only heat and dust, but his jaw set in silence. The girl felt it too, though she did not name it. A heaviness filled the air, a weight pressing against her chest. She watched him check the rifle, fingers calm, practiced. Fear stirred in her belly, sharp and familiar. By midday, the signs grew clearer. Fresh tracks cut across the road, too many for chance. Riders at least 4, maybe more. The man crouched, studying the soil, his shadow long against the dust. When he rose, his eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He only took the reins and urged the horse faster. The girl clung to the saddle horn, her body swaying with the animal's gait. Each mile carried them deeper into rough country, hills carved by dry streams, thickets of mesquite. The rider guided them toward cover, his every movement precise, deliberate. He did not look at her, but she felt the choice in his silence. He was not leaving her. That night they built no fire. The stars burned cold above, the land silent, but for crickets and the distant cry of an owl. She lay awake, listening to him breathe, steady and calm, even as the horse shifted nervously nearby. Somewhere in the dark, men were moving. She knew it, even without seeing. Memories pressed hard. The fire at her home, the men's voices, the terror of running barefoot into the night. She had thought she escaped, but the past had found her trail. Her body trembled. She pulled the leather strips tighter around her feet, as though they could hold her together. The rider moved closer, not touching her, only settling near enough that she felt his presence like a shield. His silence told her what words could not. He would not let them take her. By dawn, smoke marked the horizon. Not the thin line of a homestead fire, thicker, darker, moving with the wind. She knew at once. The same smoke she had seen rising behind her when she fled. Her breath quickened, panic clawing at her throat. He steadied her with a glance. One hand lifted, brief, signaling calm. Then he turned the horse east, pushing harder. For hours they rode, the land growing rougher, stones tearing at the horse's hooves, brush clawing at her torn dress. She clung tight, every muscle aching. The rider did not slow. He knew the men would follow. When the sun dipped low, they reached a canyon split by a narrow river. Water glimmered faintly in the light. He dismounted, leading the horse into the stream, letting the current wash away their trail. The girl watched, her chest tight with fear and awe. He thought not only of her thirst, but of the hunters behind. They moved through water until darkness cloaked the land. Then, on a small ledge hidden by stone, he stopped. He lifted her down, his arms strong, careful. She swayed on weak legs, but he steadied her without a word. He gathered branches, but no fire came. Instead, he sat with his back to the stone, rifle across his lap, watching the black mouth of the canyon. The girl curled near the horse, shivering in the night air. Hunger gnawed, exhaustion pressed, but she dared not sleep. Then, distant laughter. Voices carried faintly through the canyon, rough, cruel. Her body stiffened, heart racing. She turned to him. He had already heard. His eyes fixed on the dark, his finger resting lightly against the rifle's trigger guard. The voices faded, swallowed by stone. Still, he did not move, not until the stars wheeled far across the sky. Only then did she let her eyes close, her body collapsing against the cold earth. When she woke, dawn touched the canyon walls with gold. He was still there, still watching, his face drawn but steady. She realized then what his silence meant. Not emptiness, but devotion. He had chosen to keep her safe, though it was not his burden to bear. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to ask why. But words felt too small, too fragile. Instead, she reached for the canteen he had left by her side and set it near him, the closest she could come to giving something back. He took it, nodded once, and drank. That was all. But in that exchange, something passed between them, something stronger than words. The road ahead was uncertain. Behind them, death followed. Yet for the first time since she fled, she felt she was not alone in the fight. The morning broke pale and sharp. The canyon walls glowed with the first light, but the threat behind them was closer than ever. Dust rose faintly in the distance, the sound of hooves muffled but unmistakable. The girl's heart hammered, a wild drum in her chest. The rider moved silently, preparing the horse and rifle with calm precision. He did not speak, but his eyes held a promise. Whatever came, he would protect her. She watched him, fear and something like hope twisting inside her. The men appeared over the ridge, 5, 6, maybe more. Faces cruel, voices carrying mockery and command. They had followed her trail, smoke and desperation guiding them. She swallowed, trembling. He nudged the horse forward, guiding her to a narrow path through the rocks. She stumbled, weak from days of flight. He caught her mid-step, lifting her with ease, placing her securely behind him on the horse. His hand rested lightly on hers, grounding her. The first shot rang out, a warning not yet aimed. He fired back once, not to kill, but to warn. The men hesitated, unsure of the skill of the silent rider. He moved with deliberate calm, each action measured, protecting her without exposing fear. The canyon funneled them through tight rocks and scrub, every step a test. She held on, feeling the strength in him, the quiet certainty that they could survive if only she trusted. She wanted to speak, to tell him she trusted, but her voice was gone, lost in dust and fear. They reached a small ridge, the river far below, a place where the horse could not follow. He dismounted, lifting her again, holding her close as he scouted the narrow path ahead. The men were closing fast. He counted the distance, the rocks, the possible cover. She realized then the weight of his choice. He could have turned back, left her to run alone, or surrendered. But he had not. Every silent act, offering water, carrying her, standing watch, had been a promise. He would not abandon her. The first of the pursuers appeared around a bend, gun raised. He aimed carefully, not to shoot rashly, but to protect. The girl watched his steady hands, his calm eyes, and felt something she had not felt in years: safety. The fight was brief. One warning shot, a stamp of hooves, the cliff walls echoing with shouts. Then the men hesitated, uncertainty breaking their resolve. He used the moment, guiding her down a hidden path toward the river, a way he had scouted in silence. By midday, the canyon opened to flatland. The pursuers had vanished from sight, frustrated, unable to navigate the rocks as he had. The girl collapsed to the earth, exhausted, her legs trembling. He sat nearby, horse grazing, rifle across his lap. She looked at him then, truly looked, noticing the weight he bore in silence, the scars on his hands, the steady calm in his eyes. She wanted to speak, to name him, to thank him, to say anything. But he did not need her words. His deeds had already spoken. In that quiet space, she realized something deeper than survival. Not love, not yet, but trust, belonging, the first fragile thread of hope. The sun rose higher, burning gold across the plains. She touched the horse's mane, then reached toward him. He met her gaze, and for the first time, offered the smallest, almost imperceptible smile. A promise unspoken, but understood. They would continue together, step by step, day by day. The past might always linger, but the future, however uncertain, was theirs to meet side by side. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the warmth of the sun fill her, letting the weight of flight and fear ease. For the first time in a long time, she felt she could breathe. The quiet rider stood, brushing dust from his clothes, then gestured toward the open road ahead. She rose, weak but steady, and mounted behind him. He set off slowly, deliberately, horse and rider moving as one across the endless plains. No words were needed. The silence carried them forward. The end.